Welcome to My Life. We're here with Ernie Baker, longtime Oxford area resident, actually live in Lake Orion. And Ernie's been retired from the advertising business, owned his own business for a while, was in advertising for over 50 years. He was in the military during World War II, and he's just got a fascinating life to talk about. So far we've covered his experiences growing up in Missouri, being in the military during World War II, going to the University of Missouri, and now coming to Detroit. So why don't you pick it up there, Ernie, and tell us more about that.
I've had a lot of very good things happen to me in my life, and one of the best things was coming to Detroit, because Detroit is a big center of advertising, mainly because of the car companies, those big advertising budgets. New York is a source of advertising revenue or dollars. New York is first, Chicago's third, and Detroit is actually third. And I think it's probably still that way today, because so much of the advertising for the car companies comes out of Detroit. And plus you got the supplier companies, and you got a lot of other companies in Michigan like Kellogg's and Dow and Lazy Boy chairs. There's just a lot of advertising emanates from, particularly from southeastern Michigan. So when I came here, there were a number of job offers, and I took a job with the Zimmer Keller agency because I thought I could get more experience there than it was actually the lowest. I think it was $50 a week, $50 a week. And my wife got a job at Hudson's making $65 a week. So she was outdoing me for a while till I caught up and passed her up. But anyway.
What made you like advertising?
Well, I had the experience in journalism school my junior year. I had some really bad experiences in one interviewing Errol Flynn and some other assignments that were not pleasant. I just decided I did not want to go and become a journalist, although years later I did, when I became more of a writer, I did news releases and newsletters and all that sort of thing. And I'm doing a newsletter now for our VFW Post.
Okay, tell us more about your advertising experience when you got here.
Well, this Zimmer Keller agency was a medium-sized agency. They had about 25 or 30 people, and they had, I think, 4 account executives. And back then, each account executive had a certain number of accounts, and they not only contacted the client, they wrote the copy, planned the media, did almost everything, and then in the agency itself, they did the processing of the advertising, the production, sending ads out and all that sort of thing, the billing and all that sort of thing. But this was a very successful agency because of the overhead. They didn't have a media department, they didn't have an art department. They used an art studio to do all the layouts and so forth.
What building were you in Detroit?
Well, it was in the Stroh building on Grand Circus Park, but it later became the Mutual building, and it was next to a theater across from the old Statler Hotel. And this agency was on the 13th floor. They eventually were acquired by Ross Roy, which was another pretty well-known agency. But I got some very good experience there, writing copy, and in fact, my role changed. I became kind of an assistant account executive to a fellow named Al Ritter, who handled the Stroh account.
So the copy that you wrote, was that for newspapers?
No, it was news, everything. It was radio scripts.
So you wrote some radio scripts?
Oh yeah, for Laro Feeds. I wrote on feeds. Laro Feeds made cows for feeds for cows, horses, pigs, chickens, even rabbits. The first 2 ads I ever wrote were for rabbit feed, as a matter of fact.
So you had some direct contact with some of the local radio stations then, didn't you?
No, that would be one of the women in the office that would place the advertising.
Okay.
Yeah, everything I did then went back to the account executive that I worked for.
So how many years did you work for that company?
About 2.5 years. 2.5
years. And at this point, did you have any children, or?
No, from there I moved. My wife worked at Hudson's for a couple of years, and then she worked for the telephone company. And then I left that agency to become an account executive with an agency called Denman and Betteridge in the Buell building. And a few months after I was there, they split up, and I stayed with Bill Denman for a number of years, and eventually named the agency Denman and Baker, made me his junior partner. And then we grew a little bit. It was a small agency, only 10, 11, 12 people. But
how many years had you been with him when he made you a partner?
Well, let's see. I went there about 1952 or 3, and maybe 3 years, something like that. Yeah.
That was pretty good progress.
Yeah, it was, but he had some health issues, and which was unfortunate for him, but I was pretty much responsible for running the office because he was homesick. He had gout really bad. He had a hard time walking and other problems. So it almost forced me to take over the management of the agency and, pretty much run it because he was not there a lot.
How many folks do you have working for you at the time?
Well, we had about 8 or 9, something like that, 10, something like that.
And did you focus on any particular market as far as your advertising?
No, I handled the Standard Federal savings account, which was a small account. And then I handled the Buell Sons Company, which was a distributor, big wholesale distributor of Philco appliances and Columbia Records and ABC washers and dryers, Coleman products. And they were far and away our biggest account that we had. It was part of the Buell family. They owned the Buell Sons Company.
Columbia Records.
Yeah.
Did you ever make any interesting contacts?
Well, I did. I met some of these, like Rosemary Clooney. I've got a picture of her when she was a young woman to us someplace. And so some of the artists would come to town and we'd have to take them around to radio stations and that sort of thing. Yeah.
So how long did you work for that agency?
Well, I worked until, actually, I really stayed there because Bill Denman in August of '63 said he informed me he was going to close the agency down at the end of the year as that corporation. And he said I could either take over the business, but I'd have to reincorporate, take over the lease. And so I decided to do that, and I remortgaged
What went through your mind?
Well, I looked at it as a great opportunity, but also, it's scary when you've got to start a business. And
how old were you at this point?
Well, it was probably my early 30s, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. And so.
So you went home and said, "Hi, honey, we've got to remortgage the house."
Yeah. And we got $15,000 there, and I borrowed $15,000, and so for $30,000. But Bill Denman was very cooperative. All the equipment, everything in the office, he sold to me for $4,000. But I took over the lease. If we closed down the agency the way he wanted to do it, he would have to pay off the lease for another. The lease was only like $800 a month, but this is back. Things were a lot cheaper than they are today. But I don't know how you start an agency today. The cost of everything is so high.
A lot of things are different today.
For the first few years, we really struggled, but we didn't lose money and we didn't make much money. And then finally, we started to really take off. And eventually the agency was mainly our clients really grew. We had Standard Federal. I handled that for over 40 years, Huron Cement for over 40 years, Detroit Tigers for 26 years, Michigan Apple account for 20-some years, Stanley business in this area. We had long-time relationships with our clients, which is quite unusual.
Okay, I want to pick your brain about any memories you might have with the Detroit Tigers, but we got to take a break first. We'll be right back.
A small town with a lot of heart and history. A hidden gem with a sense of community. Welcome to Leonard.
Back with Ernie Baker. Okay, so now you're in charge of the advertising agency, and one of your clients is the Detroit Tigers. Mm-hmm. Tell me what it was like dealing with them.
Well, they were wonderful people. When I started handling the account in 1967. Hal Middlesworth was in charge of public relations. He was a wonderful man and really respected by the sports media and so forth in Detroit. And we put out a little newsletter to our clients and prospects, and he got it. And he called me and he said, "We don't spend much money, but if you're interested, we don't have an agency, and we'd like to talk to you." So I went over and
Who owned the Tigers at that time? Do you recall?
The man in Fetzer
yes, okay.
Who owned a lot of radio stations.
Right.
Really, I only met him once, but he seemed like a really nice man.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think of the president of the company, Bob. God, he was there for years too.
That was a while ago.
But anyway, the budget that first year was $35,000. And out of that 35,000, we had to print 2 little folders. One was a group sales folder, and the other one was something else, and a season ticket mail or something.
And how many of these did you have to print? Who were they going to?
Well, like the group sales thing, that went to a lot of bars in the state. Like up in Saginaw, if they some bar wanted to sponsor a trip to Tiger Stadium that showed them how to do it and so forth. And we just updated it every year. It was not didn't change it that much. You just had to reprint it for the next season. And we put the whole schedule in for the the Tiger season. But anyway, it was a very small account, and they ran a little ad when they were out of town. They're coming back to town, upcoming games, and we were in that little ad in News and Free Press. And that was about it. So and it didn't require much contact. And then they won the World Series in '68, and of course that really helped sell tickets. And it went along for a few years, but in the meantime, we also handled a company in a big hatchery in Zeeland called Sunshine Chicks. And they sold chicks by mail order, and they bought surplus chicks from hatcheries all over the country, sold millions of chicks. And so I had some mail order experience, and I decided to try it. Back then, to get Tiger stadiums, you had to go down to the box office and buy them, or buy them by mail, because there was no
internet, there was no computer.
No, there was no Ticketmaster, and Hudson's didn't even sell them at that time. Later, Hudson did sell them, I think. So anyway, I thought, why can't they sell these tickets by mail order at the beginning of the season? So I made up an ad. It was pretty big.
What a dumb idea.
Yeah, but it worked. I'll tell you how it worked. Anyway, it had a headline. I can get all your season. Get your Tiger tickets now. Just fill out this form. It had all the games, and you had a little box. You could check the games you wanted, and how much each ticket would cost. It was pretty simple. And then there were 2 packages. If you wanted to pay $150, you get this and this and this, and a coupon, and add $2 for postage and handling. And I took it into Hal one day, and this was probably in March or April before the season started. And he looked at it, and he was kind of intrigued, and he took it into the president of and this was going to cost a couple $1,000s to run this in the News and Free Press. And he came back and said, yeah, we're going to try it. So we produced it, ran it, and time went by. In fact, I kind of forgot about it. And the season started, and Hal called me one day. He said, they weren't that, I was in the Buell building. He was only a short distance out there. And, can you come out? And I'd like to have you come out. I want to show you something. He didn't tell me what it was. And I got there, and we went over in the ticket area. And their offices were right near the corner of Michigan and Trumbull upstairs. And they had boxes full of orders. He said, we've got thousands and thousands of dollars worth of orders here. He said, we can't believe it. And he said, could they deposit all that money now? And so the next year we added a little more, and eventually we started running in Flint and Saginaw and Lansing, Toledo, Ann Arbor, all over.
Wow.
And so it grew to be about a $500,000 or $600,000 account over the years.
Wow. Tell me something. You were in business down in Detroit over the 1967 riots.
Yeah.
What are your memories of that?
Well, that was a pretty horrible time. Leading up to that, when Coleman Young became mayor, that was the worst thing that ever happened to Detroit. I mean, they don't feel that way in Detroit, but it was a disaster. There was no police on the streets downtown anymore. They just got rid of them. Everybody in my office got mugged, and one girl got mugged 3 times. These guys would come up to behind him on the streets and grab your purse and take off. And there were no police to do anything, and so it was a scary. And company left and right. Standard Federal moved their headquarters to Birmingham. We moved our offices to Birmingham. Huron Cement moved their offices to Southfield. Almost all of our clients were in pretty much a downtown area. A few were not, but everybody just left downtown. That's what happened to it. And so we just followed. We got the hell out and went out to Birmingham.
Did you?
And it was so much different. When we worked downtown, everybody got there at 9 o'clock and left at 5 o'clock. We moved to Birmingham. People got there at 8 o'clock and stayed to 6 or 7. We parked in a deck down the street where it was only cost you $10 or $15 a month. I was paying $85 a month to park my car in a garage downtown. Didn't have to pay city income tax anymore. So Coleman Young was responsible for a huge exodus of people from Detroit, is what it counts to. And they're finally starting to come back, but it's going to take years for Detroit to recover.
Yeah. Of course, the good news is in '68, the Detroit Tigers were in the World Series.
Yeah,
Were you still involved with them at that time?
Yeah. That was the second year we handled it, yeah. And again, in, '84, I think they won. They played San Diego, who won the World Series.
Yeah. So what happened after you moved to Birmingham with your business?
Well, our business really took off then. It really did. We added a lot of other accounts like the Michigan Apple account and the Stanley business. That was Stanley Door System. There were 3 divisions of the Stanley. That's a big tool company headquartered in Connecticut, you know.
Yeah, and about how many people did you have working for you at this time?
Well, it slowly grew, actually. The agency was acquired in 1989, and we had 48 people on the staff. And we were up almost to $30 million in billings. So it really, really grew. But Standard Federal became a very large account.
So did you stay in Birmingham for the rest of your advertising career?
No. We were there for a few years, and then Standard Federal built a new headquarters on Big Beaver, right across from the mall there.
Yes.
And we moved our operation there, and we were on the 5th floor of that building. Had the whole 5th floor.
Ah, and that's... is that the big building that you see when you drive towards Detroit on I-75?
No, I don't think you can see it from I-75.
Oh, okay.
It's about 6 stories high, but it's tiered.
Okay.
It's now Bank of America. Bank of America eventually acquired all those Standard Federal's offices.
Okay. And what was happening with your family during this time? You had children, right?
Yes, I had 2 sons. In spite of all that, I was active in Boy Scouts with them because I was a scout as a kid. And my oldest son became an Eagle Scout, and his oldest son became an Eagle Scout. But we lived in Grosse Pointe Farms, and we lived a half a block from Kirby Grade School, and a block and a half from Brownell, so the boys could play those playgrounds. It was an ideal place to live, and they went through Grosse Pointe South. And then my son Bob went through Western and became an electrical engineer, and unfortunately, he worked for General Motors in Flint, but he died in 2007 in his sleep, had a heart attack. And then my other son is a dentist. He went to U of D Dental School, and he was a dentist here in Lake Orion for 20-some years, and now lives in Park City, Utah, and he's a dentist there.
Wow.
So, and then my grandchildren, they're all spread all over. One's in Milan, Italy, and one's in San Francisco, one's in Oregon, one's in Grand Rapids, one's in Florida.
Wow. So, we have to take a little break, but we'll be right back.
Your local business.
Your police department.
Your local business.
Your village of Oxford.
The schools. Your parks and recreation.
Your community.
Your community.
Only on OC TV.
Take off your hat, throw it in the corner. Take off your hat, throw it in the corner. Take off your hat, throw it in the corner. I don't see why you stay a little longer. I'm talking about Boozoo. Woo! Boozoo, that's who. Oh, yeah. Hey, oh, yeah. Come on down. Stay a little longer.
Back with Ernie Baker. Ernie, tell us more about the final years of your advertising career, who your clients were, your major clients, and how the business was going, and what you were most proud of, that sort of thing.
Well, it came time when I figured I had to do something with the agency, and we had a lot of offers to merge with other agencies. Several of them were downtown Detroit, and I was not about to go back downtown Detroit because we were then in Troy in the Standard Federal building. And anyway, in about 1988, we had offers to be acquired by Omnicom, which is on the New York Stock Exchange. It's a huge company. They own many, many advertising agencies, including BBDO and DDB Needham and a great many of other advertising agencies. Huge operation. And so we were, after a lot of negotiation, we were acquired, and then we became part of DDB Needham's Detroit office. And they handled the Volkswagen and Audi accounts. And after about a year, I was the chairman, CEO of the office. And anyway, the new marketing guy at Volkswagen decided he wanted to have the creative move from Detroit to New York because he wasn't satisfied with what we were doing. And then they moved the Audi account to Chicago. So that left Omnicom really with what was my former agency as their Detroit operation. And their offices are all big. So we were then merged with BBDO, which was a great move because it's a great agency worldwide. And I became executive vice president of that agency in charge of the general accounts. That included Standard Federal, Health Alliance Plan, and a variety of local accounts. And so I continued in that position. But my first wife died of cancer in '92, and I'd taken a leave of absence, and I was 65 then. And but one day, Bill Oswald, about a week after my wife had passed in February of '92, Bill Oswald called, wanted to meet me for breakfast in Birmingham, and I figured, well, we're going to have a little retirement party and say goodbye and all that. The first thing he said,
you were 65. You had just lost your wife.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So anyway, the first thing he said, I want you to come back to work. I said, really? I said, that's great. Because my responsibility had been reassigned to someone else, a woman by the name of Kit King, who did a fabulous job. And so anyway, it was a new position, but it was pretty much public relations because we had a staff of close to 1,000 people, but no, we weren't sending out any news releases about promotions or achievements or so forth, and we needed a newsletter for the staff and one for our clients. And so he wanted me to do that, but we were also coming up to the 100th anniversary of the car business in Detroit. And he was supposed to be on a committee, and he said, I just cannot take the time because he supervises the Dodge car and truck accounts as well as run the office. So I took over that responsibility and also represented the agency on the Greater Detroit Chamber of Commerce because, like Tom Ricketts was on the board, who was Standard Federal, people from all of our clients had representation. They felt the agency should have some representation too, which I filled that role. So it was a real interesting job. I got to go to New York a few times, in Toronto, and when you're going on a company bill, it's fun to have all your expenses paid and take your wife along. But in the meantime, after my wife Joan died, I met Mary Lou, and we were introduced to a mutual friend. And we went together for a few years and then got married a few years ago, and it's worked out well. She's a wonderful wife. I'm very fortunate to have had two great wives.
That's great. In all these years of advertising, you've met some very interesting people, I'm sure.
Yeah, I have.
Can you tell me about some of the most interesting people who left you with some of the best memories?
Well, most of them you don't have any memories because you meet them once and that's about it. But I went to Hollywood a number of times to, supervise commercials, and in those visits we met in the Columbia Studios one time. I met Jerry Lewis and watched them produce a movie, and so we got to meet. I got to meet Judy Garland one time at the she was at the Beverly Hills Club, and we were invited there for dinner, and she was sitting there at the bar by herself, and you
didn't get to go to very classy places, did you?
No, fortunately, I did not pay for it.
That's the best part.
Yeah, you bet. So, but it was interesting to meet some of these people. And I've met a few politicians too along the way.
As you look at the advertising business today, what are some of the things that go through your mind?
Well, it's changed so much. Social media has really changed the advertising business. Huge budgets that used to be in like television are now in social media budgets and so forth. But I watch television, and a lot of these commercials, when they're done, I look at it and I think, now what the hell were they advertising, Because they spend 25 seconds entertaining you, and then bingo, hit the name quick at the end, and you think, what the heck was that all about? And some of these companies that advertise, you've never heard of them before, and they go by initials, which is even worse. Because IBM is one thing, but some of these companies with initials you've never heard of, they assume everybody knows who they are, and people don't. But I know that some of these companies advertising, they're not for the general public. They're advertising to reach a specific market, like doctors or lawyers or whatever.
Yeah. Now, I know we were chatting before our session here. You did have a chance to meet Mike Ilitch on a couple of occasions, right?
Oh, yes.
You want to tell us a little more about that?
Well, fortunately, I was the first agency to handle his account. It was when he was first very new in the pizza business. And I never got to, I only met with him a couple of times ago. We had a young account executive that handled the account.
At that point, it was Little Caesars. That's
it was Little Caesars, right.
Yeah.
And their offices were off of Telegraph somewhere in the back of a building. And anyway, he did not have an agency, and this young account executive played on a hockey team that he supported. And through that connection, we got the account. But he had maybe 15 locations, and he ran about a half-page ad in the Red Wing program. He didn't own the Red Wings then, and he listed these locations, and we had a couple addresses, the numbers wrong, and he got angry about it and called me. He said, I'm hiring another agency. I said, well, is there some reason? Yeah, he said, you got these addresses wrong. I said, well, I'm sorry if it's our mistake, we'll pay for it, you know. And he said, no, he said, I've already selected another agency, so that was the end of that. But I had no idea he was going to go on and become a national account like that. In fact, of all things, years later, we had a young man join our staff by the name of Greg Hollab, who was a really good advertising guy. And he then went to work for Mars and handled the Little Caesars account on a national basis. But unfortunately, Greg died a couple of years ago. But he was a really, really nice young man.
Okay, well, we're kind of running out of time. You're involved very much with local veterans. Are there any activities you'd like to promote before we go, or?
Well, there's something almost every month that's happening around here. Next Saturday will be this coming Saturday will be the.
Well, it's August 1st.
Yeah, this coming Saturday is the parade, and our VFW post will be leading the parade. And I understand there's over 70 units will be in the parade, so we'll be involved. But, and then following that at Whitechapel, there's the Gold Star Mothers event. Our honor guard will be leading that group up to the for that ceremony. So we're doing something every month, and we donate. We sold over $50,000, raised $50,000 this spring from poppies, and we use that money to help veterans. And we sent 10 children to summer camp, paid $2,000 for that. So we're doing a lot of good with the money we collect, and thanks to the generous people in Oxford and Lake Orion in this area that buy a poppy, and that's the money we use to do all the things that we do. Okay,
in 30 seconds, if you could do it all over again, would you change anything?
No, I really wouldn't. I feel very fortunate. A lot of good things have happened to me. I've had down days when I lost my son and my wife, but that's all part of life, you know. And lost some good friends. All the guys I served with in the Pacific that were friends, they've passed, and I just recently lost a friend that I had in high school and college, and lifelong friend. He was an usher when my wife and I were married, and he died recently, which, you know, but life goes on.
And we're lucky to have you in our community. Well, thanks for joining us on My Life.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Okay, Ernie.
You betcha.
Okay, very good. Ernie Baker, we'll see you next time.
Okay.
You're watching OCTV, Oxford Community Television, serving Oxford, Addison Township, and the village of Leonard.
Canine Stray Rescue is Oxford's own local dog rescue. Each year they take in hundreds of dogs and bring them into suitable homes. A certified nonprofit organization, Canine Dog Rescue strives to give pound dogs a new leash on life. To donate, adopt, or even volunteer, call them at 248-628-0435 or go to their website dogsaver.org and click on the Canine Stray Rescue League link.